Alright, so we specifically looked at the art and architecture of medieval Europe, and we noticed that a lot of it focused around religion. So now what we're going to do is actually look at the religion in medieval Europe. We have a good background because of what we've studied, but I want us to put some down on paper. As you can see in the background, we do have a cathedral there. You can see the large cross shape. You can see the large stained glass windows, the flying buttresses to help distribute the weight. So now, let's look at some of the specific facts within medieval Europe. Alright, the church and medieval life. During the Middle Ages, two churches emerged, and we talked about this when we talked about the Roman Empire splitting in two, the forming of the Byzantine Empire, and of Western Europe that's leading to the kingdoms that you guys are living in. So, in the East, with the Byzantine Empire, we had the Orthodox Church, or the East Orthodox Church. That ends up developing its own ways, still a branch of Christianity, but its own separate branch. The main one that we focus on, that we're seeing in the Middle Ages when we're studying Western Europe, is the Roman Catholic Church. So the churches we looked at, the stories that we had looked at with the art and architecture, go along with the Roman Catholic Church. But between about 1050 and 1150, a strong wave of religion swept across Western Europe. So a lot more people started believing in the Roman Catholic Church. And as a result, we see a lot more monasteries are built, more people become priests, monks, and nuns. So a lot more people are interested in the religion, and as we know, priests, monks, and nuns help spread the religion to other people. Alright, the Roman Catholic Church, the hierarchy, the ranking of power. As we said, the Pope has a lot of power. He is at the top. There's only one Pope in the Roman Catholic Church. Remember, he can rival the power of the king. Below the Pope are bishops, and as we mentioned that those cathedrals, which there's not nearly as many cathedrals in Europe, there are everyday churches. Bishops are below the Pope. They led worship in the cathedrals. Below the bishops are the local priests, and there's one on each manor, at least one priest for each church. Collectively, these are all called the clergy. Okay, so why did the Roman Catholic Church have so much power? We're going to see that they become extremely powerful. They have a lot of say in the development of what's going on in Western Europe, but why? Well, the role of the Catholic Church in medieval life during the Middle Ages, life was short and difficult for most people. So we don't see people living to be 80, 90, 100 like we do today. Children are lucky to live past the age of childhood very often. People weren't living out towards 70, 80 years old. They're dying much earlier in life. And their life was very difficult. We mentioned majority of people are peasants and serfs, and they're stuck in this job that, is really hard manual labor. So their faith in God and the church gave them hope for the future, specifically the idea of heaven, which we talked about when the idea of Christianity came about. Is, remember, those Roman gods and goddesses weren't looking out for the people, and they hear about this promise of an afterlife that would give them a better life than here on earth, and so people were interested, people supported the idea of the church. Alright, so the responsibility was to serve the spiritual needs of the medieval society. So the church was there to serve the needs of the people spiritually. They taught all men and women that only Christians could have an eternal life in heaven. So that if you wanted this promise of an eternal life, that you had to convert to Christianity. So to achieve this goal, people had to participate in religion. They had to participate in the Roman Catholic Church. Now, the role of the church in medieval life. Daily life revolved around the church. So most of your life, somehow part of your day was involved with the church. Priests ran the schools and the hospitals. They recorded births, they performed weddings, they conducted burials. For basically, from life to death, the priests were involved in your life. On Sundays and holy days, people went to Mass. or Catholic worship service. Mass, we can see, is highlighted because it would be one of our vocab words. It was believed that God blessed pilgrims or religious travelers who journeyed to holy places. So it was encouraged that people visit Jerusalem, which, if we remember, that is the area where Jesus was from. So it was encouraged that people travel to this holy place because it was a holy of places for their religion. And so it was encouraged that people would travel to these holy places. All right. As we learned about with looking at medieval art and the cathedrals, that most people couldn't read. Close to 95% were illiterate. They could not read. So this gave the church a lot of control over people. People didn't question religion because the priest would say, well, it's in the Bible. So they would learn stories about the Bible and about life from what their priest would tell them from the images they would see in the stained glass. But we saw very little people that would question what the priests were saying to them, because if they did, they would just be like, oh, well, the Bible says so. Well, here, look it up. Well, people couldn't look it up because they didn't know how to read, so they had to trust the church. Now, the secular role of the church, different from the religious role, different from being part of the spiritual. The secular is attitudes, ideas, activities, or other things that have no religious or spiritual basis. So what role did the church play that was not the religious part of their lives? So aside from religious duties, the church also filled secular roles during the Middle Ages. So let's look at that. The secular role, the church was the largest landholder in Europe. This gave them economic power. The more land you hold, the more wealth you're going to have. They're going to gain a lot of wealth through taxes. Christians are required to pay 1/10 of their income to the Roman Catholic Church. So 1/10 of all of you make is automatically going to the church. Even peasants and serfs had to pay this. The church also had its own justice system. So we can see economically they have a lot of power. They own a lot of land. They're gaining wealth through taxes. And they are making decisions through their own justice system. They were given many fiefs from lords. Remember, fief is a piece of land. This land became home to monks and nuns. So many of the pieces of land that they received were used by monks and nuns. They grew crops and tended livestock. They copied and decorated holy books. They ran orphanage and schools and did good deeds in the community on these pieces of land, these pieces of fiefs that they earned from lords. Now, popes believed they had authority over kings. And popes sometimes excommunicated kings from the Catholic Church. Excommunicate, another vocab word, means to exclude or kick out of the church. So, example, Pope Innocent III excommunicated King John of England in the 1200s because they disagreed on the appointment of a bishop. So because King John did not like who the Pope appointed, the Pope did not like, he disagreed with him, so he excommunicated him or kicked him out of the Catholic Church. Very powerful position that the Pope is in. Alright, so a little bit of a summary. The hierarchy, the order, the ranking, popes at top, bishops, then local priests. Everyday life, Christians attended village churches, some priests ran schools. All Christians paid a 10% tax to the church. Monks and nuns set up housing, hospitals, and schools. Some became missionaries, felt that their job was to spread the word of the Roman Catholic Church. And some preserved learning by teaching others to read and write. Power of the church, the Pope led the Roman Catholic Church. Church had its own laws and courts. And the church excommunicated those who did not obey, even including kings.